He wasn't kidding. I was fortunate enough to receive a free copy of Ashwastes from Games Workshop, so I've had a really good look at it and I'm going to tell you what I think. Let's have a look. Ashwastes is the latest box set from Games Workshop set on Necromunda, but instead of brutal gang warfare in the claustrophobic industrial belly of the Underhive, we're out into the vast, unforgiving and inhospitable landscape of the greater equatorial wastes. It's kind of out of the frying pan and into the firestorm, if you like. Ashwastes breaks the trend of Necromunda box sets since its re-release in 2017 by giving us the core rulebook within the box itself. Although it hasn't been stated officially, this is the new rulebook, the new hardback rulebook. It contains all of the core rules from the original hardback, including rules for Sector Mechanicus and Zone Mortalis, and introduces a plethora of new ones. So vehicles, mounts, battlefield effects, a new campaign system, new skills, and a D66 tactics card table. I'd like to address some of the speculation that I've seen online, and just to say emphatically, this book does not contain faction rules, vehicle stats, or a trading post. It's a pure rulebook. All of the rules to run nomads, the new vehicles, the mounts, etc. are all in a booklet that's included in the box. In that booklet you'll get enough information to run the two gangs, all of the new toys, and to be able to test them out in this new rule set. You get a selection of primary, secondary and leadership skills for both gangs, no special skills. All orcs don't have access to the arms masters and wreckers, and there's no real advancement mechanic for them. Now, I appreciate that that might not be what some of you want to hear, and that some people will no doubt be running away to their keyboards in a vitriolic rage, but if you do want to find out what is in this box and how insanely good it is, then please keep watching. But no, this book won't change your life, but what it will do is change Necromunda in some really exciting ways. First of all, vehicles. Now, vehicles aren't some cheaply tacked on chapter or addendum. They've been interwoven into the fabric of the rules, and they're as complex and deep to play as any fighter. Every aspect of the game has been taken into consideration when adding vehicles. So line of sight, movement, combat, shooting, advancement, experience, interaction with terrain, everything. Vehicles act like any other fighter on the board, but with their own unique mechanics. You add them at gang creation or during the campaign, you get an extra 400 credits at startup on top of your basic 1000, and you have to spend that money on vehicles or mounts, and any you don't spend, you've scratched from the record. Vehicles get cards just like fighters, but with a few noticeable differences. So you get vehicle name, vehicle type. Now if you notice, the stat line's broken up into two sections: vehicle characteristics and crew characteristics. Vehicle characteristics are broken up into move and toughness, which is then further broken up into front, side and rear. You get hull points, which act as wounds, handling, which means how good you are at loss of control tests, a save, which is how heavily armoured the vehicle is. The crew stats are more recognisable, so ballistic skill, leadership, intelligence, cool, etc. You also get any special rules associated with that vehicle type, and obviously any upgrades or war gear. Okay, so things worth pointing out. The crew obviously has one stat line regardless of how many members of crew are in a vehicle. The vehicle in battle is considered one unit for the purpose of fighting, movement and combat, but is treated separately in the post-battle sequence. We currently only have the All-Outrider quad in the box set, so we can say that the quad type has the agile and wield special rules. Agile means that you can move 90 degrees twice in a simple move, which we'll come to later. And wheeled means that you struggle with difficult terrain, so for every 1 inch moved, it counts as 2. Now, vehicles have unique statuses, just like fighters. So fighters are either standing or prone, with the secondary condition of engaged or active, or pinned or seriously injured. But with vehicles, it's mobile or stationary, with a secondary status of stalled or wrecked. Now, just to give you a flavour of how vehicles work, I'll read out the actions that a vehicle can take while mobile. Move. Move your movement characteristic and turn once 90 degrees on your centre point, either at the beginning, during, or at the end of your move. Manoeuvre. Move half of your movement characteristic and move 90 degrees on your centre point as many times as you want. Move and shoot. Move half of your characteristic and fire 1 onboard weapon. Fire all. 1 ranged attack with each weapon with the crew weapon trait. Now, vehicles have crew weapons, which on the Orlock quad would be the heavy bolter or the harpoon launcher, and they can also have sidearms. So in this instance, you could still only fire 1 weapon once, so it doesn't really make sense to stay stationary and do that. But on larger vehicles, where they've got multiple mounted weapons that are crew weapon trait, then they get to fire all of them. Reload. Reload 1 weapon. Aim, +1 to hit. Drift. Move half of your movement characteristic on one of your side arcs and then make a loss of control test at the end of that with a +1 modifier. Ram. So that's your movement characteristic plus a d6, like a charge, but you half the movement that you've travelled for ascertaining the damage that you sustain after ramming. Vehicle damage is worked out by determining how much you've travelled, and that dictates how strong the hit is at the point of impact. So you're halving that damage for yourself, but whoever sustains the hit is taking the full damage. Spin. Turn 180 degrees on your centre point and take a loss of control test. Full throttle. Now this one's cool. Move 3 times your movement characteristic, but if you turn at any point, take a loss of control test at a -1 modifier. I hope this goes somewhere to illustrate some of the many options that are available to vehicles within the ashwastes, and that's not even counting stalled and the secondary status of those, broken vehicles, impacts with other vehicles, head-on collisions, running people over, etc, etc. Fighters treat vehicles like terrain, so you can climb them, run across them, jump from one vehicle to the other, jump from terrain to a vehicle and the other way around. You can fist fight on top of them, shoot off the top of them. You can even steal loot from them. We can't use all of these rules immediately, but it's really cool to see the seeds that have been planted and the forethought that's been put into the mechanics of the game. It's going to get very chaotic. So just with what I've mentioned, that's the potential for ramming vehicles off the road, jumping from a bridge onto the top of a truck, planting an explosive and diving off into the dust, or even staging a train heist. It's pretty fucking exciting. Now, I've mentioned loss of control tests, so let's have a quick look at those. So if you have to make a loss of control test, you're rolling against your handling, and if you fail, you have to roll a control dice. And the 3 possible results are swerve, jackknife and roll. Swerve means that you turn a 45-degree axis on your centre point. Jackknife is a 90-degree turn on your centre point. And roll is basically the vehicle gets flipped over onto its side or its top. Now if you're stationary, that just means you're getting turned into an inconvenient facing. If you're mobile, that means that you're moving half of your movement characteristic while taking that turn. Now, if you're out in the open, that might not mean a lot. You'll just take the damage from whatever it is that made you take the loss of control test. But if you're next to a big old rock or a piece of terrain, it's going to hurt. Rolling is really bad. If you roll, you're out of the game. That's it. Game over for that vehicle. It's wrecked. If you roll while you're moving, then it's out of the game for you and potentially anything else that you hit.
Okay, let's have a look at location dice and damage dice. Location dice are divided into four: body, engine, crew and drive, whilst damage dice has either glancing hit, penetrating hit or catastrophic hit. The combination of those are worked out on the four corresponding tables.
Now, take a minute, imagine all of the things I've just talked about, and then add those people who are scrambling over vehicles and fighting on top of them. And just think about the myriad moving parts that are in play just in a single activation. Yeah. Now, as I said earlier, we only get the quads in the box, so we can only ascertain so many of the rules. But by reading between the lines and looking at the mechanics that are buried in there and cross-referencing with the booklet that we get, we can draw out some other information. Now, if a vehicle gets wrecked, the crew roll on the seriously injured table and the vehicle rolls on a lasting damage table. Your crew can die, which means that they aren't part of the vehicle permanently, and there must be an option at some point to buy a new crew to populate that vehicle, because that vehicle just goes into your stash. If, on the other hand, your vehicle gets taken out of action and you roll on the lasting damage chart, it might just take a stat decrease. Alternatively, it might be written off. Now, you can take this to the chop shop and negotiate repairs, but if that all fails and your vehicle's gone, your crew either have to have a vehicle from your stash or a new one bought. Now, the mechanics around this are very vague because, again, with the example of the Outrider quad, we get the crew and the vehicle combined in one cost in that booklet, and I don't know if that becomes more complex when we get a book of vehicles, but we can only kind of speculate at the moment. Crew can advance like the other members of your gang, and there might be a stat increase or possibly one of the new driving skills. Similarly, vehicles can be upgraded. Upgrades are bought at the trading post or the black market, and they might improve a vehicle's handling or alternatively add a new weapon hardpoint. Weapon hardpoints are how you attach new weapon systems to vehicles. Upgrades can be changed, but there's a risk that they'll be damaged when you're removing the other one. You can't remove an upgrade unless you are replacing it with another one. If a vehicle's wrecked or it's sustained so much lasting damage that it's not really worth taking anymore, you can turn it in for scrap. You get like a small amount of credits back. You keep the weapons, they're going to your stash, but any upgrades are lost. We also know that there are going to be wheeled, tracked and skimmer vehicles, but the only thing we know about them so far is that they handle difficult and dangerous terrain differently. Basically, vehicles are awesome straight out of the box, and they're just going to get even more crazy as the game develops. They're only going to get more customizable and more awesome as the game grows. Think Pimp My Ride, but with multiple weapon systems. Before long, we're all going to be smashing into each other on purpose, ramming each other off the roads, blowing each other up. It'll be kind of like Mad Max, but with the added benefit of laughing your tits off at your mates afterwards. You don't fancy the internal combustion engine. You feel possibly you're more of a cavalryman, yeah? Well, then there's mounts. Now, mounts are different to vehicles. They're a condition that's conferred by an item of war gear. That might be a dirt bike or a giant flea. Now, the only example we have of mounts in the box set are the Dustback Hellamite Rider. Now, we don't know the range of what's going to be available. We don't know how much they're going to cost, and we don't know what restrictions there'll be to who can take them. The example we do have, the Bugs, gives us a movement of 8 and gives us the Mighty Leap skill. So we know that mounts confer bonuses, but we don't know what the others will be. When you're on a mount, you lose one weapon slot, so you're probably reduced to 2 for most people. You can't use unwieldy weapons unless they have the lance trait, because nothing says badass like jousting with a truck on the back of a giant flea. You can't dismount during a battle, you can't go on terrain, and you can't go on vehicles, and these are the price that you pay for the extra speed and the bonuses that you've gained. You can't be knocked off your mount. You fall over and you can get pinned, unlike Neotech and grav cutters. Put those keys down and the silver spray paint, and before you rev your engines, you're going to have to check the weather and your destination, because the weather is murderous, the geography is homicidal. Honestly, this planet just wants to straight up kill you and everyone you love. Seriously, the design team have done an amazing job of representing how much of a shithole the wastes really are by giving us the deceptively named seasons and regions. So seasons are divided into season of fire, season of ash, and season of change. If you're really lucky, you might roll yellow skies, which is essentially a good day on Necromunda. Think of those early 2000s films with that filter. That's basically what you get. But you might have shit for luck and get boiling winds, firestorms, ash cyclones. It's going to get nasty. Weather seriously hampers your ability to either see, breathe, or move, making things like vehicles, terrain, and equipment even more important. Even if the weather's clement, then you still have the location to take into account. Locations are broken up into near wastes, deep wastes, and wild wastes, which deliver up such splendid destinations as crystal mazes that drive you insane, seas of glass that are impossible to drive on and increase the damage of blast weapons. Alternatively, you might roll for burning wastes, where if you fire a weapon, there's a very good chance that you're going to catch on fire. Regions often dictate that you keep moving or don't move too fast, and that can really change your approach to each battle and put a spanner in the works of even the most well laid out tactics. So with the unpredictability of vehicles, the homicidal tendencies of the planet itself, you can see that Ash Waste is going to be a lot of fun. The Ash Waste campaign is set in the huge geological feature of Cinderak Crater, and at its centre is Cinderak City. Around the circumference of the crater and dotted within it are loads of different locations and settlements, and connecting all of those is a crisscross network of roads. There's a gorgeous map that acts as a visual guide, but the creators encourage us to draw our own maps and create our own locations within the wastes. In the campaign, you'll take on the role of a trader or a raider. Outlaw gangs are always raiders unless specified by an arbitrator, and nomad gangs are always raiders by default. Traders are trying to take over road sections between different locations to establish trade routes. Raiders are trying to disrupt those trade routes and rob your shit. Think mobile murderous monopoly, and you're somewhere there. There are 13 new Ash Waste scenarios, including 2 roll and road scenarios. Roll and roads amp up the carnage even further by placing you on a 6x4 mat, and you're essentially trying to stay on the mat while achieving whatever the objective is. This is made more difficult by the fact that you moved 8 inches every round backwards. Terrain is generated at every round and is hurtling towards you at 8 inches around. And then there's the small question of other gangs that you're trying to contend with. You can veer off the road at the sides. Now, if you're playing like a canyon chase, you're going to be hitting walls. If you're playing a cliff top chase, you're going to be falling off into a ravine. And if you're in the open wastes, then you might veer off, and hopefully with a successful roll on your intelligence, you'll be able to rejoin the game at the end of the mat. And yes, there's even an opportunity to race against each other in the beautifully named Bone Road Death Race. Some scenarios are Ash Wastes, and some can be played as Sector Mechanicus, Zone Mortalis, or Ash Wastes. Some require that you don't use vehicles and that you brave the wastes on foot. There's a lot in this box, and there's a lot in this book, and that comes at a price. And I was very fortunate. I got this sent to me, and if I hadn't had it sent to me, I would have had to call in a lot of birthday favours in order to be able to get it. I would have bought it, and personally I wouldn't have been disappointed by what I received. I can't and won't tell you to buy this. You have to make that decision, and if it's too steep a price, then that's completely understandable. I will say this, I'm certain that this book and most of the stuff in the box is getting a separate release. The book has a D66 table for the Ashwaste Tactics cards. All of the campaign cards have listings inside, so there's a way to use those without the cards. To get the most from this book, they're going to release supplements, and those supplements are going to be useless without this book. So logic dictates that the book will be released separately. If you do want to get in on Ashwastes early and hit the ground running, get early access to the rulebook, the terrain, the cards and the dice, then this is an awesome box. If you're a terrain maker, kit basher, campaign junkie or arbitrator, then you're going to love the options that Ashwastes brings to Necromunda. Now obviously I couldn't cover everything in such a short first look video, but if you do want to hear a longer discussion, then me and my partner in crime, Hivescum Steve, are dropping Ashwastes special edition of Some City Radio, which is a podcast that talks all about Necromunda. And we literally spend a couple of hours just going over our feelings and thoughts about the game. We cover the campaign in a bit more detail, some of the scenarios and the vehicle rules. Right, I'm off to build some bugs. I'll see you in the wastes.